Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. Now, as I mentioned, feedback is greatly important, as I mentioned on all my podcasts. So feel free to reach out to me. The best way to do so is two ways: email and YouTube. Alright, so, as I mentioned recently here, working on advertisement to promote my show. So when all of that gets said and done, I will give you all the information about it. Okay, so I'm pretty much on all of the different platforms out there, so it won't be hard to find me. And let's get on to the business here. So today's topic, or whenever you listen, is about the song, How Do You Talk to an Angel? Now I'm going to give my thoughts about the song and the series behind the song and the facts and everything else. Here we go. Okay, so the 90s. Man, that was the time. Even me being a kid then, it was just really interesting how the aspects of different genres merged with each other. And it really wasn't a big deal with, when you get older, in your teen years and everything else about that. But, certain people have that kind of, I listen to this kind of genre, so that means that I really appreciate music, or being a music savant, whatever you want to say. But, there was a lot. The 90s was really unique. We can say that about different decades, but I think how, for instance, a band like there's a lot of different bands to choose from here, like Spice Girls, right? Or you have bands like Garbage, you have Nirvana, you have unfortunately Hole, and you have 9 Inch Nails, you have Sonic Youth, L7, so many different, categories here, was in the cuffs of mainstream culture, where typically bands like this would be considered subculture. And the 90s helped to, say, hey, here's a platform, go get them. And so when you particularly have the entertainment industry, television, paying attention to that speaks a lot to the impact that music has on the influence of culture. Now, Aaron Spelling, unfortunately, he's no longer alive here. He had his pulse on the finger multiple times with shaping or transitioning here either the counterculture or pushing everything out and so forth, with his shows being very popular, with giving commentary about youth and sort of coming of age sometimes, with 90210, but it varies a lot. So, you got the Mod Squad here, It started out, and that centered around the aspects of the transition between youthful interpretations of crime fighting and solving issues that are terminal, terminal, or that are really an eye-opening door for the problems that we're facing people, particularly young people and all these sort of things at the time that the Mod Squad was created. And then also varying the aspects of loneliness and abandonment in different ways. So what do I mean by that? So I think this particular episode can really sum things up about how it makes a lot of sense that his stuff was so popular, and Aaron Spelling, and how it really opened the door for the 1980s to have writers, filmmakers like John Hughes and so many other different depictions about youth and culture. So there was a particular episode that centered around she was a child actor in this show, in this episode. And so the team was assigned to figure out who kidnapped her. And so it seemed as if it was a ransom deal. It sounds strange to me, but it sounds strange to say something typical. But, they're in the business of to serve and protect. So, typical ransom sort of thing. But it turns out that was just a cry for help, because her being so isolated and so lonely and not being able to connect with the general public, because she's been, she never had a normal life being a child actor and everything. And she set all that up so she could get attention. Now, relate this to this sort of shows that Aaron Spelling was producing in the 90s. That 90210 went off like gangbusters, but it's quite interesting how, initially, and I found this out through these certain source of research that I have that I'm going to refer back to in this episode. It had initially, 90210 didn't take off so much, but the aspects of showing new episodes in the summer when, all these other episodes were either in rerun mode or so forth. Again, he's putting his pulse on being on the cutting edge, doing, what's new, and changing and shaping culture. Now, this particular song comes from a series with the heights that he in himself was involved with. And unfortunately, the series didn't launch so well, because it was one of those things where it was it's either one of those things that sometimes is not the right era for it, or sometimes some things just don't test well with certain audiences. It's a lot going on. But this particular song is centered around the aspects of an up-and-coming band, and then the trials and tribulations of being a band. And this particular song was the launching pad of that. Now, at the time, the 90s, particularly when you get into pop music or, glam rock, sort of, particularly when you get in early 90s, it was still there, but it was fading out, because when you get into the early 90s, that's when grunge was really becoming its own and, wiping it out of the way and pushing it out of the way, for new sort of authentic, real rock hit. And so, getting back to the point here, the 90s was a time, specifically when you get into the imagery or subject matter about love, to have a lot of different nuance about it. Now, this particular song has that, but it's sort of, like you can say maybe a pseudo commercial format of it to where it's quite interesting. So, with that said, I'm going to get into the facts about the song. So, here we go. And of course, here, sources will greatly be provided for you. Okay, so I'll pull it up. Okay, I'll put it up for you right here. Okay, first I'm going to get into the song. And I'm reading from Song Facts here. So, How Do You Talk to an Angel by Jamie Walters. This is the particular singer who was behind this song. So, it was from, as I mentioned, the show from the album entitled The Heights. It charted number 1 in the U.S. in 1992. Before Aaron Spelling cast Jamie Walters as Ray Pruitt on his popular teen soap Beverly Hills 90210, Walters played a soft-spoken singer on another spelling drama entitled The Heights. Now, the short-lived series follows a group of young adults who form a rock band, and this idea spelling borrowed from a 1991 movie, an Irish movie entitled The Commitments. And the Irish movie had to do with the aspects of, again, which the inspiration of that were sort of trying to figure out their own way in their band, how they want to showcase themselves to the public, and the ups and downs and tribulations with being in a band and interpersonal issues and all these kind of things. All right, so it says the short-lived series, as I said, follows a group of young adults who form a rock band and an ideal spelling borrowed from this movie. So he hired Stephen Terrell, a record producer and a singer-songwriter known for his work on movie soundtracks such as The Five Heartbeats and Father of the Bride. And, Five Heartbeats was a Fox movie, as the show's music supervisor. Terrell also co-wrote the theme song, How Do You Talk to an Angel, along with then-wife Stephanie Terrell and songwriter Barry Coffin. Singing from the perspective of his shy character, Alex O'Brien, Walters tries to muster the courage to talk to a female sax player he likes. On the strength of the song, Terrell is enlisted to write an entire soundtrack album that will coincide with the TV show's fall premiere. As the lead single, the theme song peaked number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Unfortunately, The Heights wasn't as successful. It was canceled less than a week after the single dropped off the top charts. So this was the last TV theme song to hit number 1 on the Hot 100. Prior to it, the 1992 feat, Miami Vice theme topped in 1985. So Boyz II Men were enjoying a record 13-week run and entered the road when Angel soared to number 1. A fact that put the wind in Stephen Terrell's wings. One thing that he is quoted by saying this, Stephen Terrell, one thing that I'm really proud of about the song is that it knocked off the end of the road. The competition there, he told Billboard magazine. At the time, that was the biggest record of all time, and our little song from a TV show cruised right along and knocked him off the charts. Shortly after Walters released his platinum-selling debut album, including the number one hit, Hold On, Spelling brought him into 90210. Now, this is quite interesting. So, image plays a lot of different roles with the aspects of the success and failure of something. And this can't be denied and can't be wiped out when it comes to music and it comes to entertainment and it comes to characters in a series. So Walters he talked about this some years ago when it came to the aspects of which is, I don't know, it's not one of those things. It's nice to, I see it from two sides of having the label as a one-hit wonder. One note to take account of, how amazing is that to catch the attention from the masses by one hit and it just, really sweep the nation. On the other hand, being a one-trick pony, that's not really fair to the aspects of the establishment and the career that the band has made. For instance, the Vinyls, they were very prevalent Australian rock band, and then the song "I Touched Myself" here comes along, and hey, they're labeled as just a one-hit wonder when that's not really the case because they were a very prominent Australian rock band here. But in this case, it's quite an interesting field to be a actor in a song that's has to do sorted with a scripted television series and it takes off. What do you do with that? And then also with the aspects of Walters being casted in 90210 and he's been, he was the boyfriend or something like that of, I don't really know her character name, 90210, Tori Spelling character, and, being very abusive towards her. And then he talked and he said that he being cast in this role really was the quote unquote end note of his career because, the fans, teenage girls rallied together. He was saying, no, leave her alone. Like they, really this whole thing. And it's kind of, was that a whole thing of heightening up his self after the fact? Him talking about this years after the fact. I don't know. It's really interesting how the aspects of being put out there that, certain people can't separate reality from fiction. It's a whole thing, but that's quite interesting in the mix of the popularity of the show and then all with the aspects of how popular the song was. All right, so saying this now, as like I was saying, he was casted as a love interest for Donna, played by the producer's daughter, Tori Spelling, in 1994. Now, Ray turned out to be a philanderer and abuser, in addition to being a singer of blues-tingled love songs. And the fans wouldn't let the actor live it down. Now, Walters was still a real-life musician signed to Atlantic Records, and his character's reputation wasn't helping his ticket sales, as he recalled. And this is what he's recalled to say. He said this: so at first, Ray was sort of like the underdog. He was this guy from the wrong side of the town who didn't fit in with the Beverly Hills kids. But he had his music and he was honest and all of that. And then they started twisting him into being like this abusive, evil boyfriend. I was like, you either have to change the character or you have to let me off the show because I am going out and I'm trying to sell tickets on our tour. And there's teenage girls out there who think that I'm really like this. I'm an abusive guy, and they hold it up at signs saying, leave Donna alone. And that's not what I wanted to do. The show eventually redeemed Ray with an apology for Donna and a revelation that he had been the victim of child abuse. The ploy worked with his subsequent album, Ride, and it turned to a certified gold hit. So the actor, this nomination, all this said and done, was for an Emmy for an outstanding individual achievement in music and lyrics, but lost to Liza Minnelli's Sorry I Asked. So, that's just quite interesting with the aspects of image and how that can really change or shape the idea of something. And also with the aspects of music, too, how those things interlink with one another. All right, so I'm going to get into some more facts about the show, The Heights. And so this was originally written in 2022, January 26th, that is, by Tom Burnham. And it's entitled The Number Ones, The Heights, How Do You Talk to an Angel? So, what? Yeah. Okay, so it's saying essentially this. So the person who wrote this, he's talking about how, and it's quite interesting. I like to know what you all think. Now, I'm going to give a summary about this because it's rather lengthy here. And so it's saying that, they watched it and they think that what was wrong was Aaron Spelling trying to make an Americanized version of, as I said, the Commitments. And that doesn't really sometimes translate all that well. And so, which is very funny and very interesting, when you have something that was renowned in itself in another country, particularly in Irish British culture here, but Irish culture here. And then, you have to be very delicate and careful about how does that translate to American audiences. And, it takes a lot of due diligence with that. And I concur with that. And so it's one of those things where it's either sometimes it's lightning in a bottle and sometimes it's just a big flop in the case of the show, The Heights. And then the way that the description of Tom's description was quite detailed, and I really appreciate writers who take the time to do this. Because he really paints a story with what he was saying about. And then if y'all are interested in reading everything in depth, feel free. I will have a source for you. Now, he's saying, it pretty much, they couldn't get it right with the aspects of the story plot because it seems like, all these things were just coming together all at once and just trying to pick up the pieces and, nothing was ever cohesive in where they wanted to go in a direction. And that, had a lot to do with, from Tom's perspective, of why it didn't work out so well. And then also with the aspects of the story plot didn't make a lot of sense with what was supposed to be the reason behind the show and so forth. And then it was quite interesting because he was making a joke about, hey, the Heights, you would think that they would have a particular tall person, somebody, which, hey, but, it has to do with the aspects of making it, excuse me, in New York City, this New York City sort of, you know, Greenwich Village sort of struggling musician sort of life here, or all of that, and working those things out. And then, you know, the Tom, this writer here who wrote this particular article, took the time to say, you know, at the time, people weren't shying away from really tall singers. You know, he gave an example of Shaq having a #1 hit. And then, you know, another, I think he didn't quite say, but I think he might be talking about Montel Jordan or so with "This Is How We Do It. This is how we do it." Na, 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 na. With that song. Might be him, and, you know, the hit of that song and so forth, you know, and giving a variance that, going back to the idea that, you know, the show didn't quite get it right with what direction they wanted to go with everything. And I can, you know, I get that, and I can see that too. So, there was something here that I've found quite interesting. So, now this show was pretty short-lived too, California Dreams. And I'm going to read a little bit about it, because as a translation to The Heights. So, it says, Steve and Stephanie, that they were both on, you know, music directors for The Heights. They kept on working in TV and in movies. So in the mid-1990s, they wrote the music for California Dreams. This was a short-lived Saturday morning young adult sitcom about another fictional band. So California Dreams never made a spun-off hit single, but the show didn't manage to stay on the air for a few years. Steve later won a Grammy for producing one of those Rod Stewart albums of standards, and unfortunately, his wife Stephanie died of cancer in 2003. She was 54. Now, California Dreams. I remember seeing this show coming up, and, you know, I think this is a nice example of the transition between, you know, at least out of the negativity of it, the failure of the show, at least they had this massive one hit wonder hit with How Do You Talk to an Angel from The Heights, with the singer Jamie fronting that bill for it. But then again, you know, going on with California Dreams, and, you know, it being not having a successful hit in the show, but the show lasting for more seasons here. And, you know, it's one of those things, when you get it right, you get it right. And it was the right time for it, because, you know, the picturesque being, and when it's the introductory of it, you see youthful people, good looking people, you know, being around the beach, and hear how that translates a lot to the imagery of 90210, you know, the California, you know, soaked sun, everything. Life is a bowl of cherries sort of mentality. And so that goes again with the aspects of getting that right with marketeers. So marketeers, at the soul of the matter of presenting a product to you, is all about the good times, fun, and the sun. And why better not have a series that is centered around that? And also, on top of that, to make everything even sweeter, has to do about music. And so it's nice to see how, you know, them sticking to it, that they eventually got a series to take off. And that's something. All right, so with all this said, I'm going to wrap everything up with my thoughts here and my commentary. So, I greatly appreciate, and I don't know. I'd like to know what you all think. I think if it wasn't for the arena that was going on in the atmosphere of the 1990s, shows like The Heights and songs like this, I don't know if it would have, even though unfortunately the show didn't last all that well, but the songs still persist, and it's relevant to these sort of atmosphere, I guess you can say, about the 1990s. That what was done right was really encapsulating the sort of motif or emotion behind the 90s. Because this particular band, this particular song in itself, is really quintessential to the sort of mood and the mentality of, I'm young, I'm sort of, figuring it all out, but I want to have this relationship, don't know quite how to do it, don't know quite if they're interested or not, that sort of, introspective reality that was really popular at the time in the 90s. And it's just nice to have songs to reflect that. And the atmosphere or the category of love. All right. I would like to know what you all think. This reaches the end. Feel free to reach out to me. And the best way to do so is two forms. Is through email and YouTube. Okay. So this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye for now.